I'm Allen Barton. I'm the writer-director of the new play OUTRAGE. And if you want to find out more about what's going on with OUTRAGE and its run in Los Angeles through November 19th, you'll listen to the rest of the interview. It's good. Well, I guess I first fell in love with theater. My older brother is very involved in musical theater and has been for a long time in New York. And I can remember when I was, I'll date myself quite specifically, but I was 8 years old and it was 1976. And he took me to New York City, where he took me to see the original A Chorus Line and the original Chicago with Cheetah Rivera and Gwen Verdon. And, so picture an 8-year-old seeing Chicago. I had no idea really what that story was about, but man, the music was cool and all these lights were cool. And he took me to Hello Dolly in Boston. We grew up in the Boston area, and anytime a big musical came through Boston, which was pretty frequent, he would take me to see, Hello Dolly, Fiddler on the Roof, everything. He was obsessed with getting me into musical theater because he loved it. So I had a very early exposure to theater, mostly through musical theater. I didn't see straight plays until later on in high school or even college. But it started early. And then my artistic training is musical. We have a musical family, and I started taking piano lessons when I was 4. So I was doing classical piano, and then I was playing piano for the musical theater productions that were happening at the school. I was like the rehearsal and production pianist for the school productions. And that became kind of this unintended foundation of theater training, because as the rehearsal pianist, you sit there week after week, day after day, week after week, watching shows being put together and kind of putting together a language of what works, what doesn't, who's good, who's not, from all aspects, who's a good director, who's a good actor, not intentionally, but you're just absorbing all of this because you're just sitting there watching, waiting for the cue, like, okay, I got to play now. And that became this sort of very unintentional, but very valuable early background in the theater. I fell in love with playwriting pretty late. I was a student at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, which is a well-known LA acting school for many years, since 1990, under a guy named Milton Katselis, who's a famous acting teacher. And I ended up taking over the school. That's my base of operations and has been through my adult life. So I was obsessed with plays and doing plays. I was a young actor and I was studying plays. And then I very quickly moved into directing under his tutelage, Milton's tutelage. And I was directing plays, figuring out plays, watching plays being put together. But I never really thought I would write one until after Milton passed away, really, when we started doing some one-act festivals. And I think I wrote a one-act because I thought, well, that's pretty easy, 15 pages, 20 pages, something like that. How much time do you need? What topic? And I found I could do that really easily. I was like, oh, that came out of me really easily. And it turned out it worked. You could see that the actors enjoyed themselves. The audience enjoyed itself. And so one of those one-acts that I wrote became the basis of what I thought would be a sort of an eccentric triptych of one acts. Like, okay, that worked really well. So let me write 2 more. And I'll have this eccentric triptych of one acts that were organized around a theme. And it'll be like, go down easy, like 1 hour of theater. And I'll give it away and I'll just do it at the theater. It'll be fun. And I gave it to a guy who was the producer of the theater company over there at that time. And he said, talented guy, a very talented producer, a guy named Gary Grossman. And he was like, you got a problem. And I was like, what's the problem? He goes, you got a problem. I want to find out what happens to these people. And I went, huh. So you mean you want me to write an act 2? And he was like, yeah, I want to find out what happens to these people. And I went, And it was just sort of this weird assignment in a way, oh, he wants an act 2. I wonder what an act 2 would be. And I thought, oh, you know what? What if, act 1 ends with his girlfriend that he's proposing to, and she tells him she's actually pregnant, which they didn't intend to have happen. What if we take that a year or 2 down the road? She has the baby, but he was never ready for that. And she grew up as moms have to, but he didn't the way he should have. And I was like, huh. And I wrote this act 2 that was really much more anchored, much more real than the 3 one acts that formed the basis of act 1. So that was my first play, and that ended up actually doing pretty well. And that's when I started thinking, I might be able to do this. And so the current play that is running now, Outrage, is my 5th full-length play in 13 years. So it usually takes me anywhere between 2 and 5 years to figure out if I have something to say about a topic and get to it. But that's how it came about with playwriting in me. Theater is a unique and it's just a unique experience because it unfolds in front of you. It's right there. We have gotten so used to even this format, which is applicable and useful to do this on Zoom, to get people who are far away to be able to talk like we do. But we've gotten so used to phones and Zoom and video and Netflix and, and it's all at a distance. And particularly especially with what's happened to us over the last 3 years since COVID, everything was at a distance. Everything was remote. Everything was contactless, like contact free was like a selling point, which I was mortified by. I was like, why? I want contact. I don't want contact free. I want contact. And with theater, it's right there in front of you. And in a way, the more intimate the theater, the more in front of you it's happening. And there's no substitute. There's no CGI. There's no games being played in terms of reality. It's either there and believable in front of you or it isn't. And there's something so immediate about that for the audience, I think, whether they know it or not. The fact that it's right there gives a sense of excitement that may not occur even if you're seeing Top Gun 2, which was a terrific movie, taking nothing away from what they did, and the excitement of an experience like that. But theater is its own excitement because there's no CGI. It's right there. They can't lie to you. They got to be honest, or they have to try to be honest, and then you see bad theater, and the feeling is that no one's being honest, either with the point of view of the writing or with the acting, and there's that immediacy that kind of gives it pass fail right away. And I think for the actors as well, when they're working in film and TV, the scenes are shorter. I tell the students at the school, because we do a fair amount of training on theater, and I say it's because the scenes are thicker. There's more going on per scene. Like an average movie can burn 40, 50, 60 scenes to tell a story, including guy gets into car, starts car, and drives off. It just moves the plot that much. In a play, you can't do that. In a play, a scene has to be there because it's been sweated over, thought about. There's something has to happen. And if something doesn't happen and everyone is up to their game, that scene is cut in the development process. Like, nothing's happening here. Why is this here? We don't have the time. We've got 4 scenes, 6 scenes, 8 scenes to tell a story in 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever. So these are rough numbers, but I'm just saying more per scene happens in a play just by the math. And hence the actor gets to go on more of a ride per scene. And that immediacy of there's no cut, man. No one's going to yell cut. Like, you have to make your way through it. And ideally you're well enough prepared that is not a challenge, but things happen, props go missing, someone forgets a line, something happens in the audience, you get distracted, and you have to surmount and continue through those moments and continue to tell the story. You can't crash the play. And there's something exciting about that. And the director is behind in the back getting drunk with the playwright or across the street at the bar, because once that curtain opens, you got no control, director and playwright. The actors are really either doing it or they aren't. So it's I think most actors would tell you there's no substitute for the excitement of live theater. There may be a substitute for the paycheck, without question. But there's no substitute for the excitement. The idea for Outrage came to me in 2018. I was between projects. I had done a play called Disconnection, which was about Scientology, which I knew something about through various things that is too long a story for this format. But it was a serious play, and I was taking it on, and it was controversial and provocative, and it was getting a lot of attention. But it was the tone was dramatic. Then immediately after that, I was sort of commissioned to write another play by someone who had seen Disconnection. And that play was was also kind of a nonfiction story about a doctor who was dying of cancer, and he was processing his death in this very interesting way. And the New York Times wrote about it, and that's how this producer found out about it. And then he commissioned me to write it. And we were on this journey of interviewing and research and trying to get this thing just right. But man, these were serious topics. And I was yearning in that time around 2018 during that development process to be just kind of irreverent and funny, which I was with Engagement. And my play Years to the Day is much more kind of like whip smart, clever, funny dialogue, right? And I was missing that because I was kind of constrained by the nonfiction nature of these stories to get it right and to be serious. And you can't be glib about this stuff. You got to get it right. So I wanted to be funny. So I wrote at that time a play called Outrage. It was, again, kind of like what I was talking about with my first play, Engagement, a humorous excursion. I was like, a guy like me, straight white guy, middle-aged, trying to get through a single day in Los Angeles. I got 3 kids. The schools are crazy. The bureaucracy is nuts. The wokeness was kind of making me crazy. The political correctness over here. And it was kind of a sly, comedically oriented journey, like a day in the life of a guy like me. And I figured there are other guys like me, maybe not in Los Angeles as much, but around the country who probably could relate. And so I wrote that, and it was, again, kind of, I envisioned a 1-act, 80 minutes, something funny in and out. But then as I was conceiving of like producing or getting that mounted somehow, the other play, the cancer play, Circling, suddenly got a bit of traction. There was this opportunity. I could stage my own version of it. I could cast my actors. I could use my theater, because we have been doing just stage readings with highly professional people whose availability was this and that. And I was, again, kind of not as in control as I normally am. But the producer said, hey, why don't we, the two of us were like, how about if I mount it with my people, my theater, and we get a real version of this play that people can see. Workshop production. We won't charge money. We won't get reviews, but people can see it because they wanted to get this thing to New York, to Louisville, to Chicago. I mean, they were really serious about getting that play out there. And that happened. We opened February of 2020. Does that date sound familiar? We closed March 15 of 2020. Does that date sound familiar? We were the last, I'm pretty certain we were the last live performance in Los Angeles. I mean, people were running for the metaphorical and literal hills. They were battening down the hatches. They were locking themselves in. And there I was, like, doing my last production, my last night of this show. And thereafter, I found myself, first of all, the business got wiped out. I run an acting school. The Beverly Hills Playhouse was, by then, my operation. Milton had passed away years before. The business was wiped out overnight, gone. Three cities, LA, San Francisco, New York, 300 actors, 300 students, management, staff, an operation, gone overnight, wiped out. And that's 30 years of my life at that time. So I was reeling. I was really shaky because I didn't know if we'd be able to come back. Economically devastating. And then that summer, the George Floyd riots happened. And I found myself at the epicenter, unintentionally, of a mass, like a volcano of agitation and then just hatred over Black Lives Matter and what was perceived to be my not saying enough, not doing enough to address those issues at that time. Now, from my angle, I was like, hey, listen, my 30 years of my adult life that was spent on this business, participating in it, learning it, being a protege of the guy who wrote it, ran it, and then taking it over and dealing with, that 30 years, that shot you've got at what you do with your life is gone. I'm trying to deal with that. I'm sorry. I'm not addressing this other thing because that's not my fight. My fight is my school right now, my business. It got shut down and I don't know what to do. Anyway, it was perceived I was being insensitive. If you remember that summer, things were very volatile, like just throw a match and you were going to just set off a conflagration. And that's what happened. I found myself at the sort of canceled. Some people took real umbrage at what they considered my lack of response. They lit a torch, a metaphorical torch, called me a racist, put it on social media. It started a firestorm of cancellation and acrimony. And you could have accused me of killing John F. Kennedy. You could have accused me of the Lincoln assassination, and it would have passed muster. Everyone was accusing me of everything. It was just this insane moment. Very shocking. Anyone who is listening to this who maybe has gone through a cancellation event, it is a shocking, unsettling, scary thing to go through. And Um, and it was a real test of friendships. A lot of friendships that did not pass the test at that moment for various reasons. Not saying right or wrong, just didn't pass the test, didn't pass what was needed at that moment. So it was this very shocking, alienating, crazy thing about which I could not write one word. People would say, like, gosh, this, are you going to be writing? I mean, you must be so, wow. Are you writing? I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm drinking, I'm walking the dog, and then I drink, and then I walk the dog. So it was there as this major event in my life. And I generally am writing about things that happen to me that I think might be interesting to others. You know, that's, I think a lot of writers start there, like, hey, this thing happened to me. I find that interesting. I'm pissed off. I found that hilarious, whatever. You know, I talk to the students, student writers, and I say, hey, listen, what is moving your pen? What is the thing that is moving that pen across the page? Because it better have a point of view, and it better have something of you in it. But there better be a reason to move that pen other than just that you think you can sell it as a pilot. Because that life won't mean as much as if you, then when you're moving it for a purpose. So certainly I had a reason to move a pen, but I couldn't do it because I was too close and I was too pissed off. And I had to save the business, which I ended up being able to do in large measure. So anyway, this is a very long answer for which I apologize, but there's a lot going on here in terms of what Outrage became. So this 2018 glib thing about a guy like me goes through my day and it's like, hey, the school board, it's really bureaucratic and silly. That wasn't going to cut it anymore. Like, this thing had happened and I felt it had to be talked about, because not because of me, but because you can see it in society. People are being canceled. People are canceling their friends, their family, over Trump, over COVID, over masks, over vaccine, over just general agitation about, like, everything was so highly evaluated that if you didn't agree with me, you had to get out of my life. And I found that fascinating and dangerous and scary. And I thought, that's what I'm writing about. That's what Outrage is now. And I went back to the 2018 play. I cut out all the super glib stuff. And I realized the structure of it, like, it's my story. It's a guy who had a certain life in the arts and in theater and in LA, and gets canceled in this moment. And then act two are the ramifications of that. Like, the structure came to me. I just went, oh, that'll work. And then you start moving the pen. So that's a super long answer, but it's a complicated story about how Outrage came about. It wasn't just like, hey, I woke up one day and I thought, hey, I'll write about cancellation. It was a big thing that happened to me, and then I saw it happening to others, and I was having really interesting conversations with people, good ones, bad ones, agreement, disagreement. And I just thought, I haven't heard this. I haven't heard this dramatized. I don't hear it in the theater. I'm not seeing it on TV. No one's writing about this, certainly not from the standpoint of a guy who went through it. And so I just went, I think I got something there that I have to offer to the space. And when I think I have that, then I can start writing. The world of Outrage is, in the script, I said it's 45/COVID adjacent. And the reason I did that is because I couldn't be locked to the timeline of 2020. Because, look, we were all locked down. So there was not a lot of people talking in person, which is not makes it tough to do a play. Like, there's a bunch of people and they're all locked in their rooms. Like, I don't want to do a play about that. Everyone was in their masks, and I don't want to do a play about people in masks. The events in terms of George Floyd, that is not an event that I felt could be argued about. Like, it was just too horrific and too clear. So I was like, I need to create a parallel world where these events can be arranged the way I want them to be. We don't have to name a president. We don't have to name anything. But it's a parallel world to contemporary Los Angeles, and that's where we are in the time range of 2020 to 2022. But the events are not actual calendar specific, like documentary style. I fabricated events and sequences so I could tell the story. The opening of Outrage is basically, again, a guy like me, an acting teacher, a writing teacher, and the smoke detectors in his house aren't working, which was in my original concept of Outrage, of it being like a whimsical, hey, try to get through your life I had written this scene about the smoke detectors not working because my smoke detectors weren't working, and it was hilarious and like driving me nuts. I was like, there's a scene in there. I've never seen someone talk about this issue with the smoke detectors. So in this play, it's more of a metaphor for the events about to come. Like the smoke detectors are failing. So what could that lead to? A fire inspection is alluded to. Just certain things to plant where we're heading. But it's a teacher, a writing and acting teacher, and he's delivering a critique, and a student has written a scene, and it's about how she was on a blind date with a guy who voted for the current president. I just call him the current president. And she can't believe it. It's insane. How could anyone in Los Angeles have voted for the current president? This man is such a monster. And she's written a scene about that. The teacher is sort of like, I don't know if that's the hook of all time. I mean, it's just not that surprising that someone, we've got a diverse city here. People vote all sorts of the place. She can't handle it. So it unfolds over a certain 72 hours, basically, of the class where he delivers this critique. The smoke detectors are not working at his house. Elaine is a friend of the student he's critiquing is a friend of his wife's. The three of them meet at the house about this critique, trying to solve it. And I created this kind of fugue that goes in and out of these realities to kind of unload a lot of basic information in a way that I thought was interesting and not too expositional. And that was dramatic. And it ends with this student, this friend, who's a college friend of his wife's, leaving and infuriated. Like, I can't be friends with you anymore. If you voted for this man, I cannot be friends. I can't be in your house. I'm out of here. See you later. And that's kind of where the play starts, is this moment of high agitation. People are losing it, and they're losing it in ways that we haven't seen before. Why is that happening? So then we go sort of through that day. Our lead goes to the theater. He runs a theater. The lighting board doesn't work. Just again, certain things that act as metaphors for it's about to all come down, and he has a fight with the guy he is working for, or a strong conversation with the guy that is a student and he works for about someone who's applying to the program. And they get into this sort of discussion about race and justice. And are people really upset about it when well-to-do white middle-class people are really upset about racism? Are they really upset about racism, or are they signing up for club membership? I think personally in LA, this is one of my more provocative opinions, I guess, that a lot of people who are signing up for the racial justice crusade are signing up for club membership. They want to be in the club of rightness, goodness, virtue. And anger is as I say in the play, anger is your membership fee. And so they have that discussion. Then the verdict comes in, right? There's a trial going on about a cop and a bad shooting. That is a fusion of kind of Trayvon and Michael Brown in terms of actual nonfiction cases in the last 10 years. So I created something that could be argued about. And then Ethan, who's the lead character, goes home. He gets into a big fight with his sister-in-law, the guy who's fixing the smoke detectors. His wife comes in, and again, the play's called Outrage. Everyone is outraged. Everyone is getting into it about these events, the events of the world, and his opinions, his inability. The verdict comes down, and this cop gets acquitted and of a bad shoot. And basically, the end of the act is the cancellation of this teacher by a bunch of students, sort of mirroring what happened to me in 2020. And then Act 2 is the consequence. 2 years later, what happens to him? What has happened to him psychologically? What happened to him with his friends? What happened to him professionally? And then I covered that ground in Act 2. So basically, Act 1 is the setup of his life, the moments of Los Angeles, current Los Angeles, and it's getting noisy, it's getting angry. There's a incendiary criminal case going on, and ignition, fire, everything burns up, friendships burn up, buildings burn up. And then Act 2 is, then what happens because that happened? And that's basically the world of the play. So it's contemporary Los Angeles. I think you're going to hear, certainly people in Los Angeles will recognize the city and the conversations being had. And I think part of it is that I wanted to talk about my little corner of show business in a way, in a real way, because there's the Kominsky method acting class and there's the Barry acting class, and I love those two shows. But usually when acting classes and the study of acting and this kind of conversation is portrayed, it's not really portrayed, I think, with great honesty. It's portrayed for comedic effect. It's generally the actors are buffoonish and silly. While I enjoy those things, I resent that no one's telling the real story of how that goes down. So I wanted to take that in a more serious direction, even though it's the entertainment business. We should entertain and have fun. So that is the world of Outrage. Well, the main themes of Outrage are, the lead character at one point says, have you ever thought about what we're doing to ourselves and what we are becoming? And in the moment, it's funny because he's talking to his sister-in-law who's going ape shit on Facebook. She's annihilated. She's in this fight with a guy on Facebook about this police shooting and this trial and this verdict. And she's going nuts. And I've written hilarious dialogue, and she's going on and on and on and on with the most unbelievable curse words and agitation about this guy she wants to kill on Facebook. And at some point she goes completely nuts. And the lead guy says that line, have you ever thought about what we're doing to ourselves, what we've become? And I guess that's really the theme of the play, that as a guy in my 50s coming up, and it used to be hate the politician, but not the voter. Hate the politician, but not your friend who voted for him. That was an ethic that just didn't even need to be talked about. Then Trump came along in 2016 and broke everything. Just broke it. And it became hate the politician and the voter and your friend and your family, and F them. And if they don't get on board, F them even more. Cancel, done, not coming over for Thanksgiving, no more coffee, canceled on Facebook, no more friends. And this shift happened. And I'm not saying it was because of Trump, but I think it's because of how the culture has moved with social media. And this goes back over 15 years since the iPhone. So I think it's part of a bigger movement that Trump was just a symptom of. He was just the manifestation of other things that have been building for a long time. So this is not a play about Donald Trump in any way. He's just part of it in terms of he was a lightning rod. He's an identifiable lightning rod around which you can build some fun dialogue and some fun situations. So that is the basic meaning of the play: is what have we done and what are we doing to ourselves and what have we become in giving into this hatred, giving into this passion about politics that is often dictated by others, serving others' goals and means through propaganda or whatever you want to look at it. I've come to believe that the red-blue game of politics being played in this country is just theater. It's just a little fantasy story laid out for all of us to play. The real game is something much more serious, much darker, and encompasses all of red and blue who are actually in power and control the money and control the weapons. So later on in the play, the lead guy says, he's in a fight with someone, and the guy says, like, this man, this politician is the worst human being on the planet. And the lead guy says, yeah, I just don't understand why that's more important than plays, parties, scenes from class, weddings, a million drinks, in a million places, the bricks of this friendship. Why is it that that means nothing next to my having voted for someone that you hate? And that's kind of one of the major themes of the play. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Because politicians come and go, like, real fast. Friendships should stay, and there should be understanding and there should be tolerance. And we're in a very, very dangerous and intolerant moment, not just on politics. COVID also exacerbated all of this in many ways. You've got these weird, I'm sure many people are sort of putting together Venn diagrams of their friendships. Like, well, on politics, we disagree, but we can converse. On COVID, we were in agreement about lockdowns, but not about masks. But yes, on vaccines. And other people are like, Well, I actually hated COVID from the start, and my friend does too. We totally disagree about the lockdowns and how unnecessary that was, but I think the vaccines are full of shit, and he's taken 7. So we can't talk about that. You know, everyone has these weird confluences, like, what can we talk about? What can we talk about? We disagree, but we can talk. We agree. Sometimes you agree, but you still can't. It's bizarre. It's just, and you start to wonder whether it's a part of a big design, which is not what I'm writing about, but it's something you wonder as a person who's kind of grown up in a different. I felt like the country I grew up in was just much different than what it has been over the last 3 or 4 years. So that's essentially what I'm writing about. Well, when I finally finished draft 1 of the current version of Outrage, which has taken 5 years and has gone through a ton of stuff. But draft 1 of like, okay, let's do a reading of this. I looked at it and I'm like, there's like 11 roles here, 11 or 12 roles. That's a lot of actors. And to do small theater in LA, a lot of these actors, you're asking them to work for free or for small accommodations or a token gift or a gift certificate somewhere. I mean, it's theater for the love of it. We're not an equity house, you know what I mean? So it's when you're looking at 12 roles, you're like, do I have the horses? You know, my mentor Milton, when he would be thinking about a play, he was like, do you think we got the horses for this race? You know, and what he meant is like, do we have the real actors who can win? They can really take it on. So there's a very diverse bunch of roles here, and I had to go find the horses to run the race, and I couldn't be more happy with not only the actors I found, largely from the Playhouse, because that's my community. I know 1,000 people over the years through that community that I can call on. And they all gave themselves to this play. Again, some provocative views being expressed. I never heard anything about it. My wife asked me last night, she said, what are the politics of the cast, do you think? I said, I don't know. And I don't care. And I didn't talk about it, nor did they. And that's the way it should be. I have no idea if someone in the play is expressing a view that they find to be horrific personally. It didn't come up. And that's awesome. That's the way it should be. It was just a spirit of like, let's make this thing work. And when you're dealing with a new play, it's like, this scene, it's not working. What's not working? It's going on too long. Now I've cut it too short. And you're constantly making changes as a writer. You're issuing new pages every day, every week. And the actors were just terrific. They went on that ride. They learned new pages. They absorbed the thing. I put in a new scene, a little tiny 1-page scene to open Act 2, because the beginning of Act 2 was bugging me. I put that in this week before third weekend. I mean, we changed the play. We changed the opening. I got the lighting designer back down and we reprogrammed a cue and put in this little thing because I felt it needed like a tonal bridge into Act 2. And it suddenly came to me in the middle of the night. I was able to implement that. The 2 actors were there the next morning, off book on the 1 page, and we staged it. Lighting guy, we were all there, making it work to put in on week 3 of this run, this 5-week run. So I've had very, very collaborative, generous people, brave people, and no bullshit, highly professional people. Couldn't be happier with all of them. I would name all of them, but it would take 5 minutes to name the 12 actors and to extol their virtues individually. But actors are the name of the game when you're doing theater. You know, like my mentor said, do we have the horses? And for this race, we have the horses, and the acting is off the charts. What I would want the audience to get out of my play, I took great pains, and I went through a lot of drafts, and I went through a lot of writing, and I went through a lot of drinking wine and walking my dog to make sure that everyone who expresses an opinion in this play, to the best of my ability, is expressing it with integrity. So the people that my lead character, who's kind of the version of me, like an avatar of me in a way, the people he comes up against, I wanted to make sure that those fights were authentic, and that anyone watching the play from either side of that fight would say, yes, my point of view is being represented here. It's being represented honestly. So I really took pains to make sure that that happened. So what I would love in terms of what the audience experiences is some semblance of what we've all gone through, arranged, obviously, from my point of view, the events arranged around my story, but that are charging up, lighting up, and provoking thought about what we've done to ourselves and what we continue to do. And maybe some people who have been a little too quick on the trigger to cancel friends and family over opinions that used to be just things you could discuss and have a dialogue about, that maybe they walk out and reconsider whether that's actually the best way to go. And what are the real ramifications of cancellation when people are too quick to give into their passion and too slow to stand up for what's important on a human level. As a friend, like, what does it mean to be a friend? Does a friend give another friend a lecture about politics and morality? Or does a friend simply show up when the shit hits the fan, if I can say the S word? When the shit hits the fan, a friend shows up with a gun, it's in the play, with a gun, some cash, a baseball bat. Like, let's go, ready to go, ready to defend. The lectures can come later. The, hey, what were you thinking, can come later. But the main reason you're a friend is that you're there when the blank hits the fan. And I think we can all think about that a bit more. Are we really there? Or are we here? Anything you need. You know what I mean? And we've all experienced it when we're going through something, we're sick, some tragedy, and someone says, like, anything you need. It's a nice thing to say. They're saying it, and then there's the people who show up with groceries. There's the people who show up at your door and say, hey, here's cash. I know you need it. Here it is. Accept it. See you later. Like, there's a difference there. And I guess I'm trying to advocate for a certain kind of relationship between people, and not one that's just conducted on social media and serving the moral virtue and the tribal membership. Because LA is kind of a tribal city. And I think people are giving up a lot to be a part of some of these tribes. So that's kind of what I'm writing. Why should people come? I believe that the feedback I'm getting, which I'm very grateful for, the reviews actually have been largely positive, which I was not expecting. I am taking on what I consider to be a very rigid and boring intellectual life in Los Angeles culture. Like, you don't take that on and expect to be reviewed well, like, not in this town. We're actually getting reviewed pretty well, which was surprising to me. But the best feedback I'm getting is private. I mean, including an email I got like 5 minutes before I logged onto this call from an old friend who I hadn't seen in years. Not in my ballpark politically by any stretch. And that's what's fun, is that they're writing and they're saying, man, I'm still thinking about your play. 10 days later, I'm still talking to my wife about your play. I'm going to come back and bring some friends. People are bringing people. They're sending people to the play. They want to tell their friends about it so that they see it, so that they can have a conversation about it. And I think that is what theater should do, man. Like, theater shouldn't be pandering to the easiest. One guy emailed me, as a TV writer, actually, talented one. And he said, when people write these plays about whatever the current moral supposed dilemma is, tolerance for this person, that race, this orientation, whatever, and it's a play about, the safest stuff that you can argue in liberal culture these days. He called it bravery on the cheap. He says it's like taking a brave stand against crib death. You're not risking anything. And what he appreciated is you're risking everything to say what you're saying in this play. And he says that's what theater should do. And so why should people see the play? Because I don't think you're going to hear what is being talked about here anywhere else. And I'm not trying to say that as some egotistical thing, like only I could possibly. At this moment, I haven't seen it. I'm not hearing it. I haven't heard about it. A play that is talking about these issues in this way, in a provocative way. It's called Outrage for a reason, but you're going to be fine. You're going to come out of intermission and you're going to be talking. You're going to come out at the end. You're going to be talking, thinking. And that's the feedback I'm getting privately and from people after the play. People are sticking to it. They're hanging around the theater. When you do enough of these things, you can tell, like, are people sticking or are they running? No, people are sticking outside the theater. They're talking. They want to meet me. They want to talk to the cast. And that's a good sign. So I think that's why you come, because hear something different. Go to hear something different. Most of the theater that I see in the town, unfortunately, is just too much the same. in terms of what I feel is moving the pen. What's moving the pen for those plays is moral virtue, club membership, tribal sacrifice, to, make sure you're in good standing with anyone who might hire you to be in film or TV. So that's why you would come. Crimson Square is basically the current iteration of a Beverly Hills Playhouse theater company. So Beverly Hills Playhouse is actually an acting school. That is the economic engine for that place. And always has been since 1972 or 8, or whenever Milton took it over and took over that name and formed a school. It is a teaching institution, private, monthly, ongoing acting classes, writing, and it's actors, writers, and directors participating in scene study, old school training. That's the Beverly Hills Playhouse. That's what we represent. Throughout the years, we've always had a production wing, a production entity that was not the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And sometimes that production entity was official 501c3 legit thing with its own board. Sometimes it was a more improvised in-house thing. For many years between 2012 and 18, I did something that we called Project X, which was I couldn't get the rights to some of the really good plays I wanted to direct. So we would do it in-house under our educational umbrella. We would work on the full play, full staging, full commitment, and we'd present it basically in class settings plus guests if they wanted to, in an educational format for 10 performances over 1 week. Like boom, 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 boom. But obviously we didn't have I didn't name the play. We didn't have programs. We didn't have tickets. We didn't have reviews. We didn't have promotion. We didn't have money. We didn't have anything because it couldn't violate any of those agreements. And we called it Project X. We wouldn't tell you what you were going to come see. It was just like, we're doing Project X and it's going to be in this week in March. And people were blown away by that concept. Crimson Square is the latest version of all that stuff, and it's a more legit production wing. It started probably in 2018, 19 with a couple productions that we did then. I Am My Own Wife and Dinner with Friends. And then the pandemic obviously was a nightmare, and we came back, and our first production was Sex with Strangers. And we've now done, I think Outrage is probably the 6th, 7th, 8th play we've done since the pandemic. And it's just the entity under which, like, if it's the Beverly Hills Playhouse Presents, people will think, oh, an acting school is doing a theater production. Oh, that's cute, students. And it's not just students. These are highly professional people. So we've always needed an entity under which we could kind of brand and present the work. Crimson Square is that entity right now, heavily connected to the Playhouse, motivated by what we see coming out of the classes, what play, or my work as a writer, or so-and-so's work as a director. So we have very talented directors. They might come to me and say, I want to direct XYZ play. And I'll be like, okay, do we have the horses for that race? Yes. Let's do a reading. Yeah, you're right. Those actors can really do it. What's our budget? How much are we willing to lose on this? Because if you're doing theater, you're losing money. And so that's what Crimson Square is right now, is the entity under which the Playhouse channels the work, the best work, every year into legit productions that we feel the public should come and see and be reviewed and pay for. Like, when we think it's good enough to pay for, that says something. And so that it's that entity. So the Playhouse and the Crimson Square are like this, and it's just basically our production entity. Crimson Square is not yet 501c3, and so we're contemplating that. It's not that hard to go get it, but when you do, you need a board, you need separate tax returns, you need lawyers, you need this, you need that, and so we're like looking at that and going, most 501c3 theater companies in LA, like if you look at Fountain or Rogue Machine or Skylight or, so many of them, they've been around for decades, years and years and years and years. They're run by highly experienced people in their 50s and their 60s who dedicated themselves to years and years and years worth of fundraising and this and that. And they don't run schools. They just produce theater. Well, the Beverly Hills Playhouse is a school. That's our main activity. The theater we do is a little bit more ad hoc. We don't have a season. We're very responsive to the moment. Did I write a play? Do I want to do it? Yes. Well, it's my theater. We're going to do it. Did someone come up to me with a play that I have always loved that has never been done? Well, maybe we'll do that. Let's do a reading. Let's see. When does it open? We have a rental here in March. Let's do it in April. It's that kind of thing. It's very on its feet, bouncing, alive, like, let's go, let's take this opportunity, let's do this one person show, let's do something upstairs, let's do something here. And to be nimble and quick is not always easy for a nonprofit. And so, yes, you can donate. You just have to know that you're donating to what is currently a for-profit entity. I've got to be completely honest about that. You will help us do more theater for sure. It's put over there kind of in its own box in terms of that, which is dedicated for theater producing expenses. And we're very good about that, but it's not technically a tax deductible donation, which is what most people think. And we're contemplating whether to go that direction or to stay nimble and quick. If you want to stay nimble and quick, you got to stay somewhat autocratic, which means it's me, my decision-making, my willingness to lose money. But it doesn't suffer from quality. It just makes us a little bit more nimble and quick. And it's an ongoing, we always have this discussion. What form should the theater take? Project X was something that we did for 6 years. Never took any credit for anything, really. There was never a poster that had a name of a play on. We did this mysterious sort of like club membership, be on the list, get an invitation, come see us do a play. We'll talk about it afterwards. It's all free. And that was a great concept. We did like 10 productions under that banner. So it changes over time. Right now it's Crimson Square, which is essentially the Playhouse entity. Should it become 501c3 with its own board and its own tax returns and its own lawyers and its own this and a thing and a that, and yeah, that could be really good, but it also could slow us down to be in terms of being responsive. So that's the ongoing dialogue there. Well, live theater needs support everywhere, not just in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, even the well-to-do theater companies are having trouble post-COVID. I mean, the Center Theater Group, one of the leading theater companies in the country, is shut down. They're not producing. There is no 23-24 season. I don't know if there's going to be a 24-25 season. They're broke. This is a major institution. It's been around for decades. So then take those issues and take it to a small theater where they're like trying to pay the power bill. And if the air conditioning goes out, everyone wants to cry because how are we going to pay for it? Air conditioning repairs are expensive. So it's that kind of thing. So supporting live theater, it's absolutely mandatory. The way I come at it, it's like, it's mandatory. You must do it because what do you want to do? Sit back and watch Netflix the rest of your life? Sometimes you got to get out there. A friend of ours who lives on the Hill, and she's got, single mom of a special needs daughter. I mean, super intense personal life. And we took her to the theater last night and she loved it. She loved it. She hadn't been even up to LA in some number of years because her life is so demanding. And she was so excited to be in the theater, to talk about it. She was just like lit up, like very, and I'm just going, that's the magic of it. That's why you support it. And so whether it's Crimson Square which is at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, that's our wing, or whether it's Rogue Machine or Fountain or Skylight, or there are so many of them around town, and so many got wiped out and so many lost their theater space. I mean, there's a company called the Versus Theater Company that I know well, and they had a great little theater on Pico, and someone bought it and they're turning it into like God knows what. Kicked everyone out. All these small businesses, including a wonderful small theater, boom, see you later. And that's what's going on in the world. And if you don't want it to go extinct. You just don't. There's something magic about live theater, and it doesn't cost a lot to support it. If enough people were willing to shell out $100 a year over a bunch of different institutions, even in their local community, man, that can make such a huge difference. Much less someone who has got like a really thick wallet from selling a company or being involved in that which capitalism rewards these days. One thing that was disappointing to me about watching the thing in COVID, I was like, where are the freaking billionaires? Like, I just didn't, like, where's a billionaire who loves orchestra music, classical music, and who comes out and says, I'm writing a check for every small orchestra in the country. Here's my check. It's the Joe Acme Company check to support live orchestras throughout the country, $100,000 to 20 different orchestras. And for people like that, that's like small change. That's like their landscaping budget for one of their houses. I was really disappointed in the lack of what my teacher used to call give. Give as a noun. The lack of give. And we need it, man. We need it. It's not easy to run small theaters. I know. I run the infrastructure down at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. It's almost 100 years old. It is no joke to keep that place spick and span and clean, and I'm serious about it. I want the doors to open a certain way. I'm very sort of anal about everything should feel like quality goods, but it's expensive to do that, and people need the help. People need the help, particularly after COVID. Most small business, whether it's in the theater or theater and non-theater, most small business, I've talked to a lot of people. They lost 50%. They never came back to past 50% of what it was before COVID. And sometimes that 50% difference is all the profit. That's all the profit. So now they're operating break even. And through no fault of their own, through this stupid thing that happened. And so give to your local theater company. Pick ones that you like and give to it. For profit, not for profit, help out. Here's a thing. Here's a gift certificate. Here's some cash. Here's a check. Anything. It helps. Theater acts as a theater that attracts attention and attracts audience on certain nights, attracts business to the restaurant. I was there for my own play on Saturday night, and I had invited a friend of mine who was coming, and we hadn't seen each other since pre-pandemic. So we were having dinner at a place up the street on Robertson near Wilshire. And the place was packed. The restaurant was mobbed. And I was sort of thinking to myself, oh, man, I hope the kitchen is on the ball, because we're here at 6, but we got to be walking out of here at 7:40. And we just barely made it. And then as I turned around and looked behind me, the entire restaurant was walking out. They were all coming to the theater. It turns out a bunch of people were coming to the show that night, and they all arranged to go to the same restaurant. They didn't know that the Playwright was sitting in the corner eating there too. So that restaurant had an amazing night. And I walked in, I said, I've never seen this place this crowded. So it, like any sort of magnet in the community in terms of business, that magnet attracts business for everyone else around it. The coffee shops, the restaurants. People make plans to do other things in the neighborhood. And so that that $100 spent at the theater that night also propagates out, because it's $100 for the theater, but the same people went to the restaurant before the show and they spent $100 there. And for those who can afford to do that, I understand times are tough, but the theater becomes an economic engine for the community that it resides in. And so that's part of why they're important. We keep on letting people, if we keep on letting small business go under, theaters and otherwise, because we can watch it at home. We can order it at home. We can order the food. We can order the products. We can watch our entertainment without ever leaving our couch. I think it's a huge blow to the culture. Huge blow to the culture. I understand that people are making a lot of money off of that model, but it doesn't take a lot of money. It takes a fraction of the money that is being made on that model to support some of what still exists, brick and mortar, for small business and for small theaters. My name is Allen Barton. I am the writer and director of a new play in Los Angeles called OUTRAGE, running through November 19th at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And I implore anyone in Los Angeles to come out and hear a new conversation about what's going on in this world. It's not a conversation that you have heard in the theater. I can almost guarantee it. You haven't heard it on TV. Not the way we're talking about it down there with this show. It's Friday and Saturday nights, 8 o'clock, Sundays at 7 o'clock through November 19th, and I'd love to see you there.